In 1931, a fishing trawler called the Colinda was working the North Sea, 40 kilometers off the English coast, when her dredge net snagged on something buried in ancient mud. Hauled onto the deck with the day's catch was a lump of blackened peat, and locked inside it, a barbed harpoon point carved from antler by human hands. The hunter who shaped that tool never once stood on the bottom of the sea, because when he carved it, this was not seabed. This was solid ground. Beneath the grey water of the North Sea lies an entire country. Rivers, hills, forests, where people hunted, fished, and buried their dead. And then, one day, in the memory of the people who lived there, it was gone. Not eroded over centuries. Erased. Trawlers have dragged up mammoth tusks, lion bones, and human tools from these waters for 200 years. Proof this drowned world is real, beyond any doubt. The question that has haunted archaeologists for a century is not whether it existed. It's what actually killed it, and whether the same thing could happen again. Geologists and archaeologists have a name for this vanished territory: Doggerland. At the end of the last ice age, so much of Earth's water was locked into glaciers that sea levels sat far lower than today. Where the North Sea now churns, there was dry, rolling land, a vast plain connecting what is now Britain directly to the European mainland. You could have walked from the cliffs near modern London to the forests of Denmark without ever getting your feet wet. For thousands of years, Mesolithic hunter-gatherers lived across this plain, not passing through, but home. They fished its rivers with barbed antler points, like the one the Colinda dragged up centuries later. They tracked reindeer and wild boar through marsh and woodland. They lit fires on riverbanks that have not felt open air in 8,000 years. As the glaciers kept melting, the sea did not rise gently. Generation by generation, the plain shrank. Rivers that once ran for miles to the coast found the coast creeping toward them instead. Salt marsh crept over hunting grounds their grandparents had known as solid forest. Imagine watching the horizon itself retreat, year after year, within a single lifetime. By roughly 7,000 years ago, most of Doggerland had already slipped beneath the waves, leaving only its highest ground, a low range of hills geologists today call the Dogger Hills, standing above the water as an island. The last scrap of a country, surrounded on every side by water that kept climbing. The people who held on there were not watching a myth unfold. They were living the final chapter of their entire world, and they had no way of knowing how it would end. Then, around 8,200 years ago, off the coast of Norway, a section of the seafloor the size of a small country gave way. Geologists call it the Storegga Slide, one of the largest submarine landslides ever identified on Earth. It sent a tsunami racing across the North Sea toward the low, shrinking remnant of Doggerland. Sediment cores pulled from the seabed and from Scottish coastal peat show the signature clearly. A sudden layer of displaced sand, deposited in a single violent event, far inland from any normal tide line. The wave did not ask permission. It did not care how many generations had survived here already. For the last islanders of the Dogger Hills, already clinging to ground barely above the tide, that wave may have been the final blow, the moment folk memory would have called the day the world drowned. Historians note the sea had already been rising for millennia before Storegga, and the slide's exact role in Doggerland's final end is still debated. But the timing is undeniable, and for anyone on that last dry hill, the terror needs no exaggeration. For decades, Doggerland was little more than a rumour stitched together from trawler nets. Then the oil and gas industry changed everything. Energy companies had spent years firing sound waves into the seafloor, mapping rock layers in search of fuel. Archaeologists realized that same data could map something else entirely, a lost landscape. Researchers on the Europe's Lost World project, led from the University of Bradford, stitched thousands of square kilometers of that survey data into detailed maps of ancient river channels, lake beds, and hillsides. A buried country reconstructed one sonar ping at a time. For the first time in 8,000 years, someone could see where the rivers of Doggerland had once run. If this kind of drowned history pulls at you, subscribe. This channel exists to pull buried worlds back into the light. If you've ever wondered whether a world this size could truly vanish and take its people's name with it, you already have your answer. And it should unsettle you. No nation on earth remembers what Doggerland's people called themselves. No language recorded their word for home. The only voices left are the tools their hands once shaped, and the sediment that buried them. If a full inhabited country can be swallowed so completely that its name never survived, that's an uncomfortable question for coastlines being redrawn again today, as seas rise once more. Today, sea levels are creeping upward again, and coastal communities worldwide already know what it feels like to watch the tide line advance year over year. Doggerland is not a myth about the distant past. It is a record of what water does to land, given enough time. Fishing crews working the Dogger Bank still occasionally haul up dark clumps of ancient peat, still called moor log by North Sea trawlermen. Fragments of forest floor from a country that no longer has a name. Somewhere down there, the hearths have gone cold for 8,000 years, and the tools still lie exactly where their owners set them down. There was no war fought for Doggerland, no army marched to conquer it. The sea simply took it, inch by inch, and then all at once. Next time you look out at a grey, unremarkable stretch of ocean, remember, somewhere beneath waters just like these, rivers still wait in the dark for a home that will never surface again. If you want to see what else the earth has swallowed and forgotten, our next film uncovers the Storegga Slide itself, the landslide that could bury an entire hillside in minutes. Subscribe and come find the next lost world with us.